Mean Girls is one of those movies that is just so memorable and enjoyable. From the actors and fashion styles to the iconic quotes and catchphrases, it's a genuinely fun and timeless movie that even managed to put a lot of its cast and crew on the map. And, just like anything that is good, they wanted to see if they can make more money by making another, and another, and now how good even are these movies? Which Mean Girl is truly the meanest? And why the hell did 40% of you pick this franchise over Spy Kids? There's only one way to find out. So, join me on this journey as we go over every single Mean Girls movie in the second installment of the Media Marathon. There will be massive spoilers, by the way, if that wasn't obvious already. Before we kick things off with the first movie, we need to go over a bit of history with the thing that started it all. Because, in case you didn't know, Mean Girls was not an original idea, but was based on a book by the name of Queen Bees and Wannabes. Did this book have an even more interesting premise than the movie franchise it would later go on to inspire and create? Perhaps having some more exciting scenes or minor details to the plot that the movie had to shy away from? Well, no. In fact, Queen Bees and Wannabes did not have a plot at all. Written by Rosalind Wiseman and published in 2002, 2 years before the first Mean Girls movie was released, Queen Bees and Wannabes is a self-help book for young women, specifically teenage girls, that was made to help them navigate through the turbulent years of high school and help them better understand both themselves and the world around them. How not to fall into certain social traps and be manipulated by groups or cliques that are ever present in high schools all over. And while there are no real set characters like the movies it inspired, there are specific character archetypes that are outlined and discussed in the book, such as the target. This specific person, like the name implies, is one of, or even the main target/focus of the bullying and emotional abuse at the hands of the more popular social cliques in the school. Specifically, the one with the most popular girl. And of course, the most popular girl would be none other than the Queen Bee. She is equal parts pretty, popular, and petty, the top of the social food chain that manipulates others to get what she wants. And what she wants most of all is attention. She loves to be the center of attention and will make sure she always is. And who else better to help her than the sidekick? She is the number 2, the Robin to her Queen Bee's Batman. She is the best friend and closest person to the Queen Bee. And while everyone knows that the sidekick would have no real social pull without her head honcho in the picture, she is still seen as perhaps the most important girl in the group, second only to the Queen Bee, of course, the banker. This is the one that has all the secrets, all the info, all the dirt on just about everyone, even the Queen Bee. But she is loyal to her queen because of the social status her Queen Bee grants her as a result of being associated with her. Instead of getting involved in arguments, the banker will simply listen to those arguments and see what information from said argument will be useful to her at a later point in time. And who else better than to get information out of than the pleaser/wannabe. Her girl is so desperate for the popular kids to notice her, she is willing to do almost anything just to get in with them. She sees the way they run the school and wants a slice of that pie, whether she fully realizes it or not. And because she is so eager to get on the Queen Bee's good side and join her clique, she is tricked into doing the Queen Bee's dirty work at times just for her benefit. But if things go too far, then there's always the floater. Someone who is a part of the Queen Bee's clique, but isn't exclusive to just her group. She has other groups that she belongs to and will even stand up to the Queen Bee when others don't. She is a semi-neutral character archetype, only really getting involved when it's absolutely necessary. And lastly, we have the bystander. Someone who's part of the group and sees all the things that the Queen Bee is doing, but is always on the fence about whether to actually take action to stop her schemes or just let them play out. The bystander wants to do the right thing, but still wants to show the group that they are loyal to the group, and ends up in conflict with others in this clique as a result. I bet you are starting to see some similarities to characters in these movies now that you know what they are based on and how they were written to interact with each other. With character archetypes like these, it's almost guaranteed that hijinks will ensue if you put them in the same setting for a certain amount of time. And That's probably why the 2004 movie did as well as it did when it was released. While a bit overdramatic in some places, it does a great job of encapsulating the female high school experience. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. While the book itself was not intended for a dude in his 20s who is no longer in high school, it was an interesting enough read, and I do think that there are definitely some young girls, both in high school and even in middle school, that would benefit from reading something like this. But since a perfectly good adaptation already exists, why read this almost 500-page book when we can just watch? Mean Girls is a movie from 2004, written by Tina Fey and directed by Mark Waters. This timeless classic has almost nothing in common with the book it was based on, aside from the character types I listed earlier, but tells the story of a girl who tries to fit in at a new school while dealing with new relationships and social dynamics she has never experienced before this point. The film starts off with the main character, Katie Heron, getting ready for her first day at school, and her parents are doing that very uncool and embarrassing thing called loving their daughter. After learning that God gave us guns so that we could shoot gay people, don't at me, Katie tells us that she spent the last 12 years of her life in Africa, and this is her first day at a normal school after being homeschooled all of her life. So naturally, she starts her first day by almost dying. After being threatened with physical assault, Katie walks around the classroom before spilling coffee on her teacher, and if that teacher thinks her day couldn't get any worse for her, she ends up flashing her students right as the principal walks in. Perfect. Turns out, he came to class to let everyone know that they have a new student joining them this year. Okay, but why did he have to go to her class though? Is he just gonna introduce her as the new kid every class she goes into on her first day? Aren't there a bunch of other new kids since this is literally the first day of school? Before these very reasonable questions can be answered, Katie is trying to find a place to sit for lunch in the cafeteria. Sadly, she is unable to do so and ends up resigning herself to the bathroom, like a loser. And at the end of the day, she comes home feeling miserable. The next day, a random gay kid and his friend Janice tell Katie that they can help her get to her next class since she is lost. They lied. While skipping class in the grass, we finally meet the three most popular girls in the school. Karen Smith, the dumb hot blonde. Gretchen Wieners, whose family has as much money as she has dirt on everyone in school. And most importantly, Regina George, the conniving queen bee. Oh yeah, Gretchen's dad invented Pop-Tarts or something, that's why they're so rich, but that literally never comes up again, so don't worry about it. Janice explains the whole lunchroom social hierarchy to Katie before she gets hit on by some skis ball. In the midst of this sexual harassment, who else goes to stand up for the new kid but Regina George? Huh. How about that? Regina tells Katie to sit with her and chat with her for a bit, so she and the rest of the classmates can get to know her more. And after Regina tells her that she's not retarded, the one who is asks Katie why she's white if she's from Africa. Regina and her minions tell Katie that she should eat lunch with them every day for the rest of the week, and that they willingly choose to wear an ugly color on Wednesday. So Katie needs to do that too. Katie then tells Janice about this, and Janice says that Katie should become a double agent for them so that she can learn all their secrets. After chasing Danny DeVito out of the girls' bathroom, Katie goes to math class and immediately starts crushing hard on this guy in her class. The next day, Katie is eating lunch with the plastics as Gretchen explains the rules of what to wear and not to wear. While the master of secrets and holder of forbidden knowledge is explaining this all to Katie, Regina passes up on a candy bar due to that candy bar having too much fat. So she goes up to get some cheese fries for lunch instead, because that's better for her somehow. Whatever. While Regina is off grabbing bad food, Katie tells the others about her new crush, a senior in her math class named Aaron Samuels, who turns out to be Regina's ex, who she broke up with last summer for someone named Shane Oman. This will be a very important detail I will later use to describe a lot of the flaws in this franchise at the end of the video. Because he and Regina used to date, that means that he is off limits for Katie, and she should not even think about Aaron. Luckily for her, she told her very trustworthy friend Gretchen, who would never tell anyone, especially not Regina. After school gets out, Regina and the plastics pick up Katie so they can go shopping. But at the mall, they spot the guy who sexually harassed Katie on her first day of school next to the mall fountain on a date with a different girl from their school. In order to get back at him for standing up a date with Gretchen, Regina prank calls that girl's mom and tells her that her daughter is pregnant to manipulate her mom to make her come home. This works. After destroying all trust between this girl and her mom, Katie and the plastics go to Regina's house, where they head up to Regina's room and start pointing out all of their imperfections on their bodies, before her mom comes up and tells Katie that she will give her alcohol as long as she drinks it in the house. Karen finds Regina's burn book and tells Regina, "What's the burn book, you may be asking?" You people have already seen this movie. I'm not answering that. Katie and the plastics flip through the burn book, and on Janice's picture, they call her Dick Van Dyke, but when Katie tells her about the burn book, because remember, she's supposed to be like a double agent for Janice or something, she tells Janice that her name isn't even in the Barbie Death Note.
Those bitches.
This random math teacher shows up at the mall and tells Katie to join Mathletes, and Damien, Janice's gay best friend before those went mainstream, tells her that joining Mathletes would be social slip and slide, and when even the most unpopular kids tell you that something is uncool, you know it's bad. Later that night, Regina stages a fake argument with Katie to get Katie and Gretchen at odds with each other, just for the heck of it I suppose, because this literally never comes up again for the rest of the movie. After saying a grand total of 25 words to Aaron over the course of a month and a half, he invites Katie to a Halloween party. A party which Katie shows up to dressed like Bridezilla, where she is met with the lesser plastics and listens to Karen fantasize about the time she made out with her cousin. That's not a joke, by the way, that actually happened. During all this, Regina flirts with Katie's crush, whose name I can't be bothered to remember at this time, before initiating an impromptu makeout session right in front of Katie. This causes a distraught Katie to run back to her loser friends and tells them what happened. Janice fans the flames of Katie's rage, so that she is even more motivated to take down the plastics, especially Regina. And unfortunately for them, the first phase of their plan gets them absolutely nowhere, because all they end up doing is pulling a few useless pranks on Regina that, at worst, mildly inconvenience her, and at best, make her look even cooler than she already was. After a month of doing this with nothing to show for, the Losers Club changes tactics from trying to mess with Regina directly and starts using underhanded psychological tricks to cause Gretchen to spill Regina's secrets that they can later use against her while trying to dethrone the Queen of Mean, which surprisingly works really well. During a winter talent show that showcases no talent whatsoever, Gretchen starts spilling even more secrets than an interview with Tom Holland right before the plastics need to perform their act on the show. And honestly, everything was fine until the CD got scratched and Gretchen kicked the CD player into the face of someone whose name I can't be bothered to remember. After getting berated by Regina, this was the last straw for Gretchen. Also, on an unrelated side note, apparently Gretchen Wieners is Jewish? Gretchen tells Katie that Regina is hooking up with that Shane Omen dude I mentioned a while ago. So, Katie tries to get Aaron to catch her on the act, which only causes him to catch a gym teacher with a student instead. Because of these setbacks, Katie and the Losers Club are reevaluating their plan of attack due to the fact that all of their efforts of crushing Regina have been nothing more than fruitless endeavors, until they realize they can get Regina hooked on candy bars that she thinks will make her lose weight, but will actually make her fatter over time. Janice tells Katie that she is having an art show during the weekend for one of her pieces that she made, and wants her friends to combine support her. Katie, however, is too obsessed with Regina and her crush on that boy whose name is not important to realize what Janice has asked her to do. Speaking of that crush, whose entire existence here is being a plot device for shallow motivation, Katie finally convinces him to break it off with Regina, but her math teacher tells her that her grades are slipping and she is failing her calculus class. Because this teacher had the audacity to try to motivate a bright yet struggling student in her class, Katie writes her name down in the Barbie Death Note. Later on, Katie uses that same secret three-way phone call tactic that Regina used on her in the first act of the movie to get Gretchen and Karen to finally leave Regina's side, and it all comes together on the next day in what is arguably the most memorable and iconic scene from not just this movie, but the entire franchise. Regina's fashion rules for the plastics are used against her when she comes to school one day with a wardrobe malfunction, and the plastics say the most re-quoted line from the movie upon seeing her in sweatpants.
And you can't sit with us. Can't sit with us!
After this, Katie realizes that removing Regina as head of the plastics didn't just make her a social outcast, but it also made Katie the new Queen Bee. Katie makes up excuses to stay home while her parents are away, so she can throw a little party at her house, but she doesn't invite Regina. She shows up anyway. After losing all of her friends in one fell swoop, Katie realizes that she had become the very thing she set out to destroy. A one-attempt teenage drama. Wait, nope, wrong movie. Same actress though. But speaking of the thing she set out to destroy, the former Queen Bee still has one last trick up her sleeve. Regina learned what Katie did to her, and now she's out for blood. Just like Light Yagami did in L Change the World, Regina writes her own name in the Barbie Death Note, and then she pretends to find it in the school bathroom so she can bring it to the principal and frame Katie for all the terrible things that were written in the burn book. With this unexpected play from Regina, she is now back in the game and more than ready to drag down Katie and the rest of the plastics by setting them all up to take the fall for her actions. And, if that wasn't enough, Regina printed copies of the burn book pages and posts them all over the school so everyone can see all the terrible things she wrote about them. And once the female students see the pages, total chaos ensues throughout the school, a rage-induced madness perfectly orchestrated by Regina George. All the girls in the school are sent to the gym where they spend the rest of the school day working out their issues and apologizing to each other. However, when it's Janice's turn to apologize in front of everyone, she tells them all that Regina's fall from grace was no accident, but was all a calculated ploy to ruin her life. Regina couldn't believe that she had been made a fool of, especially by Janice Sarkeesian of all people. So, she storms out of the gym and into the road and gets hit by a bus where she was never seen again. What a way to go. The next day, Katie tries to deal with the fallout of everything from the last 3 days blowing up in her face, but it seems like no one is trying to give her a break. Because acts of pedo, it means feet, philia, and drug paraphernalia were listed in the burn book, the police need to investigate in order to get to the bottom of the allegations. Katie, surprisingly, decides to step up and take credit for everything in the burn book as being something she just made up, and the police decide to stop investigating right then and there because, reasons. Katie tries to make amends with all the people she hurt in her school, and is forced to join the mathletes as a punishment for saying her math teacher was a drug dealer, which isn't a real punishment, by the way, because she already said she was gonna do it in the first place in the first act of the movie, but whatever, I guess. Katie not only wins the math bowl, but also, somehow, wins fake prom queen and says that everyone looks like a winner and everyone's a winner. Oh yeah, Regina's still alive, by the way. Unfortunately. In the end, the plastics are disbanded. Gretchen joins the cool Asian clique at school, Regina becomes a jock, and Karen uses her tits to tell the weather for the school news. What the fuck? What did Katie do at the end of the movie? Well, she sat in the grass with her friends and fantasized about small children being hit by a bus. With all that plastic nonsense behind them, it seemed like everyone could finally live happily ever after. You know, this film was actually a lot funnier than I remembered being, since the last time I watched it, it was like 10 years ago. Of course, when you're a bit older, some of the more mature themes and jokes hit you harder than when you were younger and you watched this movie. But this was a much better experience than what I thought I was signing up for. I even loved the little details like how when Katie went full plastic, that she even had a C charm necklace in parallel to Regina's R charm necklace. It's never explicitly stated in the movie when she got this necklace, but I kinda like it for that. Not to mention that Damien is literally the original gay best friend trope that we will later see heavily oversaturated in modern media. But, you know, it was different for its time and I liked it for this. And since we're on the topic of tropes, while the trope of becoming the thing you despise has been done several times, it works well here in the way that the story progresses. Honestly, this movie is what the YouTube Red series Youth and Consequences wishes it could have been. However, this movie isn't perfect. There are some major plot holes that I will be going over once I finish covering the remaining 3 movies, and since 75% of this franchise tells slightly different versions of the same story, I will just save some of those things for the end. But a few minor nitpicks that are exclusive to this movie would be the fact that why did the principal waste his time introducing the new kid other than to set up for a mildly racist joke? Like, shouldn't the teacher have a roster of who the students are in her class and also have knowledge already of the new students? This kind of stuff is literally the reason why teachers start school 3 days earlier than students, by the way. Let the teacher do her job, Tim Meadows. You don't need to be there for this. When Katie is introduced as a new student from Africa, and the teacher tells this random black girl, "Welcome to America," and she replies by saying that she's from Michigan and not from Africa. Obviously, that is meant to be the joke in the movie because, haha, African people are black, and she's the only black girl in the class. But why would the principal stand right next to the new student, gesture to said new student, and the teacher still calls on this girl whose name I don't care enough to go Google for this bit in my video? It was kinda dumb that Regina just so happened to know what this girl's mom's number was during the first act in the mall. Of course, the point they want to try to get across is that if you upset Regina or cross Regina, she will crush you because she is the queen bee. I get that, cool. But why does she have this girl's mom's number? She doesn't even need to search for it in her phone. It's like she just had that shit on speed dial or something. And while I get the point they were going for, it just doesn't make any sense when you take like 3 seconds to think about why does she just have this information so readily available? Do her and her mom talk a lot? Like, why is this just something that she could just do and no one's doing anything about? Another thing that doesn't make sense when you take 3 seconds to think about it is Katie showing up to the Halloween party looking like Bridezilla is logically not supposed to happen within the confines of this specific movie. Yes, I know what happens in the musical and the stage play, but in the first movie, they make it very apparent that Regina and the Plastics don't even buy a skirt without asking the opinion of their friends, that way they know they'll look cute. They even tell Katie that joining the athletes is a dumb and terrible idea. Long before the day of the party, Katie has already been following the rules about fashion and clothes, and by the time she gets asked out by Aaron to come to the party, we see Katie dressing more and more like them already. So, it would make no sense as to why Katie wouldn't have asked the Plastics what a good costume was, given how much the girls value each other's opinion on fashion in literally every other scenario in the movie but this one. Also, Regina has never once on screen during the duration of this movie been to Katie's house. Therefore, she should not have been able to get to her party and crash said party the way that she did. This is the reoccurring thing with Regina, where she just knows things or is able to do things without any real explanation, like calling that girl's mom I just mentioned a couple bits ago, and we are kind of just forced to accept that she could just do whatever it is that she does because reasons. And lastly, that bus driver needs to get fired because literally every time it puts a student's life in danger, those students always had the right of way and were even on the crosswalk. The police are so busy looking into fake allegations about drug dealers on school campus that they don't even do anything about this bus that is a constant threat to the safety of the students. Someone, please, do something about this bus. At least verify that the driver has a valid license because I really don't think that they do. But like I said, those are all just minor nitpicks I have as far as like the continuity of the movie as a whole. This was a pretty good movie with lots of rewatchable potential, so it's no wonder how it became such a classic. It was so good in fact that people wanted more, and after 7 years of waiting, the people would finally get what they were waiting for in the form of a new movie called Mean Girls 2, as the name implies, is a sequel to the hit 2004 classic Mean Girls. For whatever reason, Tina Fey and Mark Waters weren't involved with the writing and directing of this one, so they had a few new faces tackle that responsibility instead. Directed by Melanie Marin and written by Cliff Ruby, Alana Lesser, and Allison Schroeder, Mean Girls 2 is a direct-to-video sequel that was first aired on ABC back in 2011 during a double feature event with Mean Girls 1 and, subsequently, you guessed it, Mean Girls 2. But don't let the fact that this movie is a TV movie with no connections to the original directing team fool you, because this is still a Mean Girls movie with ties to the original movie, because we have familiar characters return like Principal Duval and yeah, no, it's just him. But don't worry, because we have a lot of new characters that are probably gonna be fun to watch for 90 minutes or so. I hope. We are introduced to our main character, Jo, who has been moving to a new school every 6 months. But, luckily for her, the last school she will be going to for senior year is North Shore High. The same school from the last movie that I didn't bother naming because it wasn't important. Remember how the ending of Mean Girls 1 was all about the abolishment of the plastics? Well, fuck all that noise because we can get at least, 2 more movies out of this, some Paramount executive probably said. And who better to fill the shoes that Regina George left empty than Mandy Weatherly, the new queen bee of North Shore High, that's who. But of course, this isn't the only plastic palette swap. We have Chastity Meyer, who is filling in for Karen Smith as the school body catcher, and Hope Plotkin, who's the new Gretchen. But instead of being filthy rich and having the dirt on everyone like Gretchen did last movie, Hope is actually afraid of getting her hands dirty. Literally. She is just a huge germaphobe and that's like her entire character. Maybe they didn't want anyone else to be richer than Wish.com Regina George in this one. Anyway, Jo starts her first day by checking into the principal's office before going to her first class. Maybe they realized how stupid it was to have the principal go to her class on the first day and introduce her to the new students, so they just did it in his office instead. JoJo starts her bizarre adventure by running into a claustrophobe on her way to go check in with the principal, and here is where I run into my first issue with the main character, is that her entire personality is, I'm not like other girls, and I'm not even joking when I say that she has 3 of those end-log moments back to back to back, from the time she meets the principal to when she goes to eat her lunch. But you know who else is eating the lunch at this time? The plastics. Oh yeah, this happens too. After bragging to her clique that she is only dating her current boyfriend so that she can cheat on him in LA and become a swimsuit model, this girl with plastophobia, real word, look it up by the way, feeds Mandy's dog that she's apparently allowed to have in school, but whatever. And as a result, the dog barks inside of Mandy's purse. When Mandy wants answers as to who did this, everyone immediately throws this girl under the bus. In response, Mandy tells her not to even breathe the same air as her before throwing her dog in the trash. Jo goes home only for her dad to tell her that her hopes of going to her dream school are all but down the drain due to her dad not having enough money to pay the tuition fee for it. But speaking of money, do you know who has more than enough money? Abby, aka the plastophobe from earlier. Turns out that not only do Abby and Regina George Light live right across the street from each other, but Mandy's entire reason for hating Abby is because Abby's parents have more money than Mandy's parents. Are you fucking serious? So, let me get this straight. Mandy's motivations for going out of her way to make this girl's life a living hell every day she's at school boil down to Abby's parents have more money, and Abby hit puberty faster than her. Do you want me to not care about your characters? Because this is how you make me not care about your characters.
Do I look like most girls?
Fuck off. Abby leaves school after class is over, only to find her car covered in paintball shots. This isn't even a prank anymore, this is a literal crime by the way. The N-Log offers Abby a ride home on her Peter Parker pizza scooter, and after getting home, she runs up the stairs to her room. She runs pretty well for a visibly unathletic girl who just sprained her ankle literally yesterday, but perhaps I'm expecting too much from this movie in terms of consistency. Abby's parents talk about how their daughter comes home crying every day after getting back from school. The dad's solution is to buy her new clothes and send her to a spa resort for a week, but the mom tells him that what Abby needs the most right now are friends, and that money can't solve this problem when she has no friends. So of course, he decides to buy Abby a friend and use his money to solve this problem. I'm sure this won't lead to a very predictable fight in the third act of the film between Jo and Abby at all.
Look, just try it out for 30 days, risk-free.
Dude, the dialogue in this movie is fucking hysterical. The biodegradable plastics are in Regina Light's room when they find out that the new kid, Jo, stood up to help Abby and drove her home. After watching this happen on a not Instagram reel, Mandy gets upset and wants to turn Jo to the dark side and make her into a plastic. It doesn't happen. The chief editor of this movie's version of the Daily Bugle tells Jo that declining Mandy's offer to become a plastic was a big mistake because one time Mandy gave the mousy reporter girl an allergic reaction on purpose just for the sake of being petty. Can we get a counter going for these literal crimes that Mandy is committing and or orchestrating? Thanks. Jo goes over to talk to Abby in a friendly way, and Abby immediately guesses that someone sent Jo her way since she has no real friends at the school. And she would have been right on the money, get it, if she guessed that her dad was the one behind it and not the principal, but whatever.
We all know the tradition here at North Shore is to use the homecoming dance to fundraise for charity.
A tradition that was never once mentioned in the first movie, and I guarantee will never be mentioned in the next movie. Mandy sees Jo and Abby hanging out as friends after school and she gets jealous. Jo invites Abby to her house, and after bonding over sketches and art, Abby leaves to go home, but as she's leaving, someone else appears nearby. Nope. No. Jo has been at the school for all of 3 days so far. How did they even find her house? Turns out Regina Light superglued Jo to the seat of her scooter, so Jo rides it inside the school, with no repercussions from any teacher for this by the way, before getting an art smock to wear around the school instead of the pants that ended up being glued to the seat. But apparently, her wardrobe malfunction was so iconic that she inadvertently created some new type of trend at the school, which Mandy hates. So, she starts making moves to prepare for her next crime, next act of pettiness against Joe. After school gets out, Abby and Joe hang out in her room and bond over art again. The next day, Joe gets asked out by her crush, and Mandy's spy tells her about it. I refuse to believe that people get this close on what is a first date. Someone in the comments, please verify. Am I dating the wrong people, or is this just not real? I'm gonna have to go with the latter, maybe I'm just delusional. Joe goes to school the next day, only to see her face on a school TV while everyone is making fun of her for being a virgin? I swear, these people's problems are not real problems.
Siblings?
I thought he told you. Tyler's Mandy's stepbrother.
But I thought they were just hooking up.
If this movie took place between 5 years ago and today, then it probably would be. Mandy tells Hope, who has been so irrelevant I actually forgot she was in this movie, to read Joe's file and get whatever dirt she can on Joe. They find nothing. Also, they went to Joe's house before they went to go look at her file, so how could they have possibly known where her address is before going to look at her file? But then again, I guess I can't really expect anything in terms of consistency within this movie. Turns out, Joe and Mandy's stepbro are the hottest new couple in school, and Mandy hates that. After getting bored of ruining Joe's shop class projects, Mandy and her duo of dimwits sneak into Joe's house. Again, but this time to pour coffee in the engine of a race car that Joe's dad was designing for a company. Because building car engines was literally his entire job, Mandy decided to take that away from him just because Joe told her that she didn't want to be a plastic. And while Joe's dad sees it as the engine just malfunctioning, Joe sees some fake sugar on the ground and realizes the truth. This sends her over the edge, and now she's done with ignoring Mandy and is ready to retaliate. And the first step in her plan is to confront Mandy to let her know that the gloves are off. Mandy is very unamused and doesn't take Joe's declaration of war seriously though. Apparently, Mandy's birthday is right around the corner, and she hates when other people throw a party on the same day as her birthday party, because that's just how depraved for attention this little hellspawn is. So, guess what Joe and Abby decide to do? That's right, they throw an even bigger and better impromptu party than Mandy's party, literally last minute for no other reason than just to spite her. And despite the fact that no one would even breathe in the same direction of Abby, the social reject, for the last 6 years, everyone came to Abby's party and not Mandy's. Clearly frustrated that the attention is going to someone else and not her, Mandy tries to poison the pizza so that everyone throws up, but Joe easily sees through the scheme and prevents everyone from getting sick at Mandy's hand. Mandy goes over to Abby's party to see how well her latest scheme paid off, but Joe confronts Mandy and tells her that not everything is about her. To prove her wrong, Mandy decides to make out with her boyfriend right in front of Joe to show this little virgin what for. But what Mandy didn't know was that this was all a ploy set up by Joe. Joe gave Mandy's boyfriend a slice of the pizza that Mandy had ruined right before Mandy goes to kiss him, and the result is not pretty. It was at this very moment that JoJo and her bizarre friends decided to end the reign of the plastics once and for all, and to that end, they would naturally and uncreatively go on to call themselves the anti-plastics. As all the pieces assemble on both players' boards, it's time for the final game of tit for tat. The first order of business, removing Chastity from Mandy's side by exposing her prominent involvement in hookup culture. Once Chastity was dealt with, the anti-plastics went after Hope by telling everyone to sneeze and cough on her until she went crazy, and also switching out her usual face mask for green paint that doesn't wash off for several days. When it was all said and done, Mandy became the outcast, and without even realizing it, Joe had become the new queen bee of the school, but was so consumed by her newfound social influence that she became blinded to all the manipulation she had gotten herself wrapped up in. Eventually, it gets to the point where even Joe's boyfriend calls her out for how she used to be an N-log, and now she's just another clone of Mandy. Following a brutal reality check from her boyfriend, Joe receives the acceptance letter from her dream school. An acceptance letter that has a typo in it, right here. After getting into melon school or whatever, she foolishly starts wondering if she even deserves to go. The answer is yes, but we still have half an hour left in this movie, so you already know what that means. Not Katie Heron heads over to give the money she got from Abby's dad back to him, and conveniently enough, Regina Light is in the area and hears the entire conversation. Somehow, from all the way over there, even though they were talking very quietly. The next day, Joe goes to school and everybody is reading about Abby's friend for hire in the school paper. Oh my, what's this? A very predictable and unimportant fight happening in the third act of the movie? Oh, but if only someone saw such a lazy attempt to create conflict between characters coming a mile away before it even happened. Oh wait, the school reporter girl, Quinn Shin,
That's not a real name.
got her story from Mandy, which, why would she even trust what Mandy says with no proof? She's a literal known snake who lies about everything.
Face it, Joe. The plastics are the originals, and they don't have to pay anyone to be their friend.
I swear this bitch is way too infatuated with the plastics. And Mandy isn't even an original plastic, so what even is this argument? The next scene is literally Quinn sitting with the plastics as they try to come up with a plot to expel Joe from the school, just because Mandy wants to win homecoming queen, and it's too late in the game to change everyone else's votes unless the winner is removed from the school. Dude, fuck these people. Regina Light manipulates her boyfriend into stealing the money for the homecoming dance, and this causes the dance to be cancelled, unless someone returns the money. But not only that, Joe is called into the office later that day, and we learn that Mandy has framed her for the stolen money and is setting her up for a fall. Not only has she been expelled from school, but now she may not even go to college due to the allegations against her. With nowhere left to go but up, Joe leaves the office so she can try to figure out a way to clear her name. Meanwhile, rumors about Joe are already buzzing around the school and spreading like wildfire. After exiting the office, Joe almost attacks Mandy in the hall, but stops herself so she can challenge Mandy to a football game instead. Mandy is hesitant to accept her challenge at first, but then she realizes that she would easily win now that Joe has lost all her friends and doesn't have anyone who would want to be on her team, which Joe didn't even think about before it was too late to take it back. Abby figures out that Joe was a real friend to her all along, and it wasn't about the money. But speaking of money, Quinn tells her that Mandy was probably the one who set Joe up, because a few days ago, she and the plastics were talking about how to get Joe expelled. While throwing herself a pity party for one, Joe's friends come up to her and tell her that they know all about Mandy's schemes, and they want to be there for her to help Joe take down Mandy for good, once and for all. The football game kicks off, and Mandy's team is basically dominating the first half of the game, but somehow, Joe's squad manages to tie up the score with 2 minutes left on the clock, and it's at this point where Mandy tells her team to start playing dirty in order to win, and they even break this girl's glasses just to make sure she can't see for the rest of the game. But what Mandy didn't know was that the whole idea of the game was just to buy time for the school hacker to locate and leak the security footage exposing Mandy and her boyfriend as the ones who were really behind the stolen money. The Losers Club over here even manages to win the game in the last second. Despite the fact that the other team definitely scored after breaking that girl's glasses, it was just never counted for some reason. But who cares about silly things like the rules of the game or consistency in your movie? It's time for a happy ending. At the dance, Joe and the rest of the students are eager to know who the homecoming king and queen are this year, and surprisingly, neither Mandy nor Joe won, but it was actually Abigail Hanover, which means that if Mandy had gotten her way and Joe was expelled due to her plan, she still would have lost the crown to a different girl, meaning that all of her efforts would have been for absolutely nothing. Also, I love the fact that Joe acknowledges that the school hacker literally rigged the election so that he and his crush Abby would win, but no one does anything about that.
Oh my god, I never won anything!
What about the game that you literally just won 2 minutes ago when you scored the winning goal? Instead of receiving the jail time she definitely deserves for all of her crimes across this movie, all Mandy ends up getting is community service, which is pretty disappointing. Quinn became the new queen bee of North Shore High, Chastity started to finally live up to her name, and the germaphobe whose name I can't possibly hope to remember ended up getting the flu. Abby and Joe both got into Mellon School, and she and Mandy's stepbrother lived happily ever after. Alright, so, this movie had some obvious flaws. I think what really makes this movie a step down is the way that the side characters, especially the other two plastics, are just so wasted and useless until they need to be used as plot devices to move the story forward. If you were to remove half the cast of this movie, not much, if anything at all, changes, and that just goes to show how much the characters were wasted within this movie. And I'm not the only one who thinks like this. In fact, it's crazy how many negative reviews exist on just this movie. It's literally the Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate of the Mean Girls franchise. Not only was this movie filmed over the course of just 20 days, but it turns out that they filmed the most of this thing in a middle school and not a high school. If I had to say something positive about this movie, it's probably that, surprisingly, I actually really like Joe for the most part when she isn't spending the first 30 minutes of the movie reminding us how she's not like other girls. Girls. She never really did anything directly to Mandy. All she did was turn the table on whatever scheme Mandy had cooked up for Joe, and I really did like that always 2 steps ahead aspect about her. And speaking of Mandy, I hated Mandy, not because she wasn't Regina George, but because she was probably the worst aspect of this movie. Obviously, it's impossible to recreate the same magic from the first movie in a direct-to-video sequel like this one, but even with that in mind, they didn't need to make Mandy the way that they did. She is absolutely unlikable, and all of her motivations are perhaps some of the most shallow and superficial in the entire franchise, which is crazy given how many literal crimes she commits over the course of this movie and how far she'll go. You would think that her adversaries killed her mom or something, but no, she just doesn't like that the next door neighbor has bigger tits than she does, and that the new kid didn't want to be her fake ass friend, and that's literally it. Fun fact about Mean Girls 2 is that when it first aired on TV, it was the most viewed movie on TV that year. And that's probably the only objectively good thing I can tell you about this movie. It turns out that Mean Girls 2 was actually supposed to be the first in a line of Mean Girls sequels and spin-offs, which means that what we were supposed to get next should have been Mean Girls 3. A part of me wishes to see just how far they would dig that hole, and if they would just keep making empty sequels for a big IP, just because the money is coming in like so many other movie franchises. Hell, what if we ended up getting a Mean Girls movie where there are 2 Queen Bees, but one of them was from a different school, and now they're trying to see which one of them is the true apex predator of North Shore High. But it seems like after trying something new, and failing spectacularly, Mean Girls and its potential sequels were finally laid to rest, and allowed to live on in the memories of those who chose to remember these movies fondly, with no real plans to do anything with the franchise after the disaster that was Mean Girls 2. Until... once it was pretty clear that the Mean Girls TV movies weren't gonna pan out the way they thought they would, they gave up on the idea and went back to the drawing board to figure out what they were gonna do with Mean Girls. And then, just like that, a genius idea hit them. It was time to get back to basics and return to the roots of what Mean Girls is really all about. With all the sequel projects scrapped, it was time for something we had never seen before from the Mean Girls franchise. In 2013, 2 years after Mean Girls 2, news came out that Mean Girls, a Broadway musical, was in the works. However, it wouldn't be until 2017 that the play finally debuted for the first time on October 17th. Me personally, I don't exactly like musicals, because the idea of just spontaneously breaking out into song seems about as nonsensical as any premise for a production that you can get. Although, some of the blame does need to be directed towards my younger sisters, who would watch musicals while we were growing up, and every time they were doing regular things like folding laundry, doing homework, looking for blunts people dropped on the ground in our neighborhood to try to get high with their friends because they were too scared to go talk to an actual dealer, making soup. You know, normal 6th and 7th grader stuff. Sometimes they would just break out into song at the most random times, and it would piss me the hell off. So I had to tell them that we lived in the real world and that this isn't a musical, so stop acting like it. I yelled so loudly about it one time that they cried and immediately ratted me out to the parents. Young William was the brother of the year, I promise. But anyway, after hearing about the fact that a musical version of this movie exists, I suppose I'll push through and watch the Broadway one, since I'm already in too deep at this point. And also, I need to post a new video this month anyway. So let's jump into the first of the 2 Mean Girl musicals. I still can't believe you people picked this over Spy Kids. The play starts off with Janice and Damien telling us how Katie's actions caused the girl to get hit by a bus before breaking into song. Katie's parents tell her that they lost their money and now have to leave Africa to live in the US. And I can't believe it took me 12 years since I saw the first movie to realize this, but apparently Mean Girls is supposed to take place in Chicago. You know what? I kinda see it. Katie continues her song about how she wants to fit in, and no one is giving her the time of day as she is about to begin her first day of school. Alright, so this Broadway musical really does do a few things differently than the original movie, and not just the singing. I'm starting to see that it's not just a one-to-one remake. That being said, I don't feel like explaining what is still essentially the same plot of the first movie 3 times in a row in this video. So, to make this segment different, and also to challenge myself, I will only be describing how the plot progresses through its music and songs, and not by its acting. Cool. After getting hazed by her PE teacher, Katie sings a song about finding friends tomorrow. But for now, she'll be eating in the bathroom. But her pity party for one has been interrupted by a man who's almost too gay to function that starts singing about all the cliques at the school and which clique to pick. Regina George's first song in this play is about how she's the best and doesn't care about how you feel, since she is such a massive deal. Next up is Gretchen's song, which is basically about how she lives to inflate Regina's ego and that it's her entire personality. And lastly, we have Karen, who is so dumb that she forgets the rest of her lines in the middle of her song and just gives up. Katie walks past the plastics and Regina tells Katie that she is pretty and she's interested in her, leading us into the next song, which is about them inviting Katie to sit with them for the rest of the week. Katie sings a song about whether or not she should spy on the plastics. She decides to do it anyway. After meeting her new crush in math class, Katie sings about how her first crush literally ran away from her, how her next crush laughed at her for bringing him flowers, and also how after all that failure, she thought she had given up on love and men. But after meeting Aaron Samuels, she falls head over heels for him. Regina tells Katie not to join math groups because it's social slip and slide before they sing a song about how she's just like Kevin Peter Hall or someone on the Chris Hansen show. While at Regina's house, Gretchen sings a song about not having enough self-respect for herself and needing to get better friends. Like that'll happen. The next day at school, Katie tells her loser friends about the burn book before heading to math class, and chatting with her crush who breaks into song about his failed relationship with Regina, which gives Katie the idea to start lying to him for attention, just in time for the Halloween song sung by Karen leading up to the Halloween party at Jason's house. At the party, Regina tells Katie she knows that she's got the hots for Aaron, and offers to talk to him for her. But instead of talking, she just starts singing what is objectively the best song in this entire play. My only real issue with this song is that the transition from acting to singing was perhaps the worst and least seamless in this entire play, which is unfortunate given that this is the only song worth remembering in my opinion. After running home crying, Janice and Damien sing a song about how they are gonna get revenge on Regina by making her fat and emotionally manipulating Gretchen with peppermint sticks. They have people dressed up as Transformers for this thing? That's the most random thing I've seen so far in this franchise, and I honestly kinda love it for that. Surprisingly, the shortest song in this musical is Kevin G, rapping for all of 2 seconds about how he wants to fuck white girls or something like that, leading right into the main event of the talent show, the Plastics doing their usual Christmas song. But this time, Regina has a lot more mass in her Christmas than she hoped for. After the holiday fiasco, Katie sings a little number about whether or not Regina should be able to sit with them, since she is too fat to follow the rules that she made up, and what new freedoms they have now that Regina has been dethroned. In response, Regina claps back with a short song about how even though she has been cast out, this isn't over yet. The next song is a continuation of the intro song from the beginning of the play, now about how Katie became the very thing she swore to destroy. A month goes by, and after Katie gets nominated in art class for Spring Fling Queen, Damien starts singing to Katie about how she needs to stop being superficial and just be her real self, to get off the internet, touch some grass. It doesn't happen. Later on, Gretchen sings about how even though Katie is the new Queen Bee, things for her haven't changed at all, and it's as if Regina never left. Speaking of Regina, her mom comes into her room and starts singing about a party that Katie is throwing that night and didn't invite her, and that the chocolate bars she's been eating are the reason why she's gained so much weight. Parodying Gretchen's What's Wrong With Me song, Regina's mom sings about how she wishes her daughter was just on drugs instead of being emotionally unstable. What the f***? Katie's party kicks off with the party guests singing a song about how they own the place and are claiming Katie's house for themselves, while Katie is singing back in response while they need to dial it back. After failing to quell her rowdy partygoers, Katie runs into Aaron in her room and they start singing about the benefits and drawbacks of having more, when she accidentally lets it slip that she lied to Aaron to get more attention from him. Aaron, rightfully, gets upset with this and tells her that she is nothing but a clone of Regina, that he loved the old Katie more than the new plastic Katie, and leaves her so that way she can reflect on her choices which end up costing her the only real friend she had left, as Janice drops by to drop some bars about how Katie is a coward, and that at least Regina was able to tell people to their face that she didn't want to be their friend, before leaving on a handicapped moped. Well, on the topic of Regina, we see her singing in her room about how she is still a big deal and will crush anyone in her way. To that end, she sets up a trap to take Katie down while watching the world burn with her burn book scheme. A scheme that somehow goes off perfectly and exactly how she planned, despite the many, many flaws that I will get into later. In the school gym, Janice reveals her role as the mastermind in destroying Regina's social status and doesn't even apologize for it, but instead starts singing about how she's just sorry for herself for ever getting involved with Katie and trying to use her. Not that she is sorry to Katie, but she is sorry to herself for how badly her plan ended up backfiring by using Katie. Damn, what a bitch. Katie starts singing about reflecting on her choices that led to Regina getting hit by a bus and having no friends, and now she'll do whatever it takes to make things right. To that end, Katie begins to sing about how she'll join the math instead of going to the spring dance. After casually rapping through the answers of various math problems, Katie sings another song, this time about how she can't let herself be limited by others, and by realizing that the limit does not exist, she answers the final question correctly and wins the championship. After winning a contest at the school dance that she was literally not allowed to be a part of, she sings the last song of the play, a song about how everyone's a star and that no one deserves to be made fun of because everyone is beautiful and special in their own unique ways. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I ended up enjoying this one a lot more than I expected to. It was weirdly self-aware about just how absurd its entire premise is, and that was honestly a little bit refreshing to see. Not only that, but there were a few little things that were changed that made it a bit more humorous to watch for me. Like the fact that Aaron Samuels was not actually legally registered to attend school in the same district as everyone else, so his parents lied on the address form to get him into North Shore High. It was a one-off joke that I didn't really expect them to do anything with, but when the whole burn book plot happened in the second act of the play, Aaron's secret was exposed and he got expelled from the school as a result. Not only that, Katie's math teacher actually invited Aaron after he got expelled to watch Katie in her state championship math league competition because she wanted to see if Katie could keep her focus and be her true authentic self even when her crush was watching. While I'm not too big a fan of all the singing and dancing stuff, I had a lot of fun with the Broadway musical. It's still not as good as the original, but this was definitely a step up from the previous Mean Girls sequel that we got. Let's just hope they keep on this upward trend as we head into the final installment of the Mean Girls franchise. Broadway musical went on tour from 2017 until 2020, but do you know what else happened in 2020? Aside from the entire world shutting down, that is. That's right, Mean Girls, the theatrical musical, was announced as a project. But as we all know, it would take as long as another presidential election cycle, a leap year, and an Olympic Games that almost didn't happen before we got to seeing in theaters on January 8th of 2004. Fun fact about Mean Girls, the theatrical musical, is that I actually went to go see it with my character artist the same month it came out, and thought I should make a video about it. But decided no one would want to see me make a Mean Girls video, so I just scrapped the idea altogether. What a terrible mistake that turned out to be. That being said, the return to form, even still being basically the same story again, was decent enough to watch. And I know they realized after how badly they bombed with Mean Girls 2 that they needed to have Tina Fey involved in the production in some manner, or it just wouldn't work. And that's exactly what they did. Bringing back Tina Fey and a few more familiar faces that I will get into soon was a very smart choice, and we'll soon see why. With the Broadway musical, I did my best to describe the plot via the songs that were sung and how those songs progressed the story. Here, I'm just going to talk about the things that happened in the movie and mention the songs as little as possible, so that this isn't a repeat of the Broadway segment of the video. But enough of me talking about it, let's get into the latest and most modern retelling of the misadventures of Katie Heron. We start off, again, with Janice and Damien, now spelled with an A instead of an E, telling us what the movie is gonna be about, and transition to Katie, who's leaving Africa to go to high school in Chicago. Katie doesn't have time to take in all the wonders of the Chicago education system as she gets shoulder checked and immediately shoved aside. Once again, the principal announces that they have a new student, and it's Katie. The last few movies have butchered her name on purpose so many times now that the joke about everyone saying her name wrong isn't even funny anymore, and it's just annoying to me.
Oh, I was homeschooled. Homeschooled? Oh, that's a fun way to take jobs from my union.
I think this was probably one of the few jokes across the entire franchise that I didn't already see coming a mile away and caught me somewhat off guard. Yes, it was also in the Broadway musical too, but the delivery was just much better here. Katie goes from class to class as she struggles to adjust to her new school life, or would even find a place to sit in the cafeteria and has to eat in the bathroom. What a loser. Speaking of losers, these two invite Katie to have lunch with them, and their names are Damien, a flamboyant homosexual who is almost too function to gay, and his best friend Janice, who is apparently a pyro. While helping Katie window shop for a new clique to eat lunch with, Katie sees these two idiots and asks what clique they are a part of. Turns out, those two are the Plastics. But, if that's Gretchen Wieners and Karen Shetty, where's Oh. It's gonna be one of those kind of movies. Wait, is that Renee Rapp from the Mean Girls stage play? Honestly, I feel like having her reprise her Broadway role was one of the best casting choices they could have made. Regina Rapp calls Katie over to chat and learn more about the exotic international new kid. But before she can do that, this rando tells her to jump so he can guess her bra size. Karen jumps because she's a moron. Regina tells him off for trying to creep on the new kid after going to a party with her best friend. She then invites Katie to eat lunch with them for the rest of the week, but Katie doesn't even really want to until Janice says that she should so that she can spy on Regina. But Katie doesn't even want to do that until Janice bats her eyes at Katie and she agrees to it. Katie goes to math class, and after solving 2 easy questions that are not even that difficult, the boy in front of her turns around and Katie's immediately infatuated with him to the point where she sings about it until she dies. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because that would be too easy. The next day, Katie and the Plastics are eating lunch when Regina asks about the percentage of fat in her yogurt. Because Katie is a math whiz, she gives the correct answer. However, her math is wrong.
40%. 42 over 120 equals x over 100, and then you cross multiply to get the value of x.
She says 42 over 120, when she should have said 48 over 120, which would have changed the answer she gets from a 40% to 35%, which means that since Regina is only eating foods with less than 40% fat, she would have eaten the yogurt due to Katie's incorrect explanation of basic division. But hey, it's not like her entire personality, outside of being the new kid, revolves around her being good at math or anything. Oh, it does? Maybe someone should check her work next time. Regina leaves to go eat cheese fries, which are probably worse for her figure than yogurt, but whatever. And once she's gone, the lesser Plastics ask Katie if she's ever seen any boys that she thinks that are cute. Once she mentions Aaron, they tell her that he is off limits since Regina dated him last summer and broke up with him for someone named Shane Oman. But don't worry, Katie, because Gretchen would never tell Regina. She's super trustworthy. Kevin from math class asks Katie to join the mathletes, and the Plastics tell her not to, because it's socially ruinous. I love the fact that they changed the word because they don't have the balls to just say suicide. After lunch, Katie tells Janice that Regina might actually be nicer than Janice thinks. Janice tells her that she is nothing more than an apex predator before Katie goes to her house that same day. And while Regina may be an apex predator, I'm pretty sure her mom is an actual predator.
I always say that this school district has the highest taxes, but the hottest boys.
Why don't you have a seat right over there?
Regina tells her mom to leave the room while she and the girls flip through the burn book her mom brought to her. After Regina degrades her best friend, Gretchen gives Katie some ugly shoes before having an emotional crisis in the closet. The next day at school, Katie tells her non-plastic friends about the burn book before going to math class, where she will proceed to make a fool of herself in front of Aaron Samuels every day for 38 days of the 39 days she's been attending North Shore High. And how do I know it's been that long? Because while North Shore High may not be a real school, it is confirmed that the school is based on New Trier High School, and in 2024, which is when this movie came out and takes place, Katie said that the only normal interaction she had with him was on October 3rd.
Have you successfully been a functioning human being even once?
On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was.
What day is it?
It's October 3rd. That was 2 weeks ago.
Which was 2 weeks ago, meaning that the current date in this point of the film is October 17th. Do the math and exclude the weekends and the 3 calendar holidays, and you get 39 days. Unrelated side note, but apparently on this particular calendar, there was a day off right before the last day of school. And if you're telling me that I need to come back on the last day of school right after the day before was already a no school day, then you can just fuck right off with that bullshit. Speaking of bad ideas, Katie has been telling her loser friends that she has been pretending to be dumb so that Aaron would give her more attention. For whatever reason, this stupid plan works, and she gets invited to a Halloween party by Aaron. A party where every girl is expected to dress like sexy corn or something like that. So, when Katie dresses up in a costume with no sex appeal at all, she becomes the odd one out at the party. Luckily for her, Aaron is nice enough to lie to her and tell her that she looks good in her costume. Regina figures out that Katie is interested in Aaron, and even tells Katie that she can talk to Aaron for her. But what she really does is flirt with him before performing what is undoubtedly the best song in this entire franchise, while making moves on him that cause him to take Regina back as his girlfriend again. This is probably the one scene I feel is done so much better than the original, and I almost forgot what an absolute banger this song was after not watching this movie in 7 months. After Katie gets her heart stomped on by watching Regina Rapp steal the love of her life right before her eyes, she runs back to her loser friend's house and tells them all about what Regina did. Damien then explains that this is far from the first time Regina played with someone's emotions and their love life, before telling us the truth of what actually happened between Regina and Janice back when they were best friends. As far as Regina's story goes, she tells Katie that Janice and her were best friends in middle school, but after Regina got a boyfriend, Janice became obsessed with her and lit her backpack on fire. But the true story, according to Damien, goes like this. Regina and Janice were best friends in middle school, but after Janice got a boyfriend, and that boyfriend one day had some friends over to play spin the bottle, Regina spun the bottle, but it landed on Janice. Naturally, by the rules of the game, Regina kisses Janice, but immediately makes fun of Janice in front of everyone, telling them that she knew that Janice wouldn't stop her from kissing her because she is a lesbian. Some time passes, and once Janice has had enough of Regina's constant taunting and teasing about her sexuality, she takes a Bunsen burner and lights Regina's plushie that Janice gave her on fire, along with the backpack. So, Regina was right then, because in both stories, they were best friends, Regina got a boyfriend, Janice was emotionally infatuated with Regina due to her crush, and that made Regina uncomfortable. Janice lit her backpack on fire. There were some minor details that served as context in Damien's story, but technically, Regina was basically right about everything she described, almost as if her story was
true from a certain point of view.
Now knowing the truth of who Regina really is, the three of them formulate an elaborate plan to ruin Regina's life and make sure that Katie ends up with Aaron this time. The first step is getting her fat, the second step is getting her friendless, and the third step is getting her found out with another boy. So far, only step 3 has been yielding results, but we'll see how this goes. Tiny Faye tells Katie that she needs to stop pretending to be dumb to get attention because it's negatively affecting her grade in a very drastic way. In response to this, Katie gets upset that her idiotic actions have consequences and writes mean things about Roxanne Ritchie in this pink G-rated death note while hanging out in Regina's room. Speaking of Regina, she's been acting a bit erratic and unfocused ever since she got dumped by her once again ex-boyfriend Aaron. But I don't even know why she cares, because 1, she was the one to break it off with Aaron last summer. 2, she already had another boyfriend before she dated Aaron again, Shane Oman. But not only that, she specifically broke up with Aaron so she could be with Shane instead of Aaron. And 3, she doesn't even like Aaron, she was only using him because Katie was into him. So why does she even care now? But there's no time to examine the flaws in Regina's unjustified anger, because it's time for the Christmas talent show. Kevin G from math class does a rap about how he's smarter than everyone else and satisfies women in bed. But honestly, this is my second favorite song from the movie because it's just so fantastically stupid. And now it's time for the main event. The Plastics are doing a dance to Rocking Around the Pole. I guess they couldn't get the rights to Jingle Bell Rock this time, huh? But doesn't matter due to the fact that their act got cut short when it all went south and fell on its face, or rather, Regina's face. This leads to everyone making fun of Regina online, which subsequently causes everyone to start viewing Katie as more interesting and hotter than Regina. And all that attention Katie got started to get to her head and made her want even more attention. But at this point, Janice is telling Katie that they did enough to Regina and it's time to call it quits. However, Katie tells the Losers Club that she wants one more lunch with the Plastics before calling it quits, but this lunch won't be like any other lunch they've had before, as Regina struts down the cafeteria hall, unaware that the final nail in her queen bee coffin is awaiting her at the table. Due to all the get fat quick bars that she has been eating non-stop, she is sporting some fetch gray sweatpants to school. Only problem is, it's Thursday, and sweatpants are for Fridays only. Because she broke the rules that she enforced for so many years, the lesser Plastics turn her away, and with nowhere to sit, Regina exits the cafeteria while everyone is staring and laughing at her. What a loser. A few days later, the principal gets on the school TV and announces that some loser is doing an art show or something super forgettable, so who cares about that? The real student news is about who is on the nominee for fake prom king and queen, and it just so happens that Katie was one of these nominees. Janice asks Katie if she's gonna need a ride for the weekend. When Katie is visibly confused, Janice explains that she was the forgettable loser who has an art show that weekend and wants her best friends to be there to support her. But with Katie being popular now, and Janice being the forgettable loser with an art show, but still the first friend Katie ever made at the new school, Katie obviously decides to remember that Janice has an art show and tell her parents that she wants to go, but only so she can actually not go to the art show and have a party at her place while her parents are out of town instead. A party that she only used as an excuse to get herself alone in a room with Aaron. What a great best friend. Do you know who else is alone in her room? Regina. And when her mom comes in to check on her, she asks why Regina is even eating those fat bars if she's trying to lose weight. And that moment, then and there, everything clicked for Regina, and she spiraled into a fit of rage. A drunk Katie tells Aaron that she pretended to be bad at math just for his attention, and also that he is the one who really needs a tutor, not Katie, because he is actually worse than her at math. She then goes on to say that she didn't want to try talking to him like a regular person because it would have offended Regina, and even goes as far as saying that he was Regina's property, which is a straight up lie, because she did try talking to him for 38 days before she started acting bad at math. The reason why she even used that as an excuse to talk to him wasn't because of Regina, but because she was literally incapable of having a sane interaction with him for more than a month. But whatever, I guess. Go ahead and throw Regina under the bus and blame her for your problems. What's she gonna do about it? Oh, so Regina Rapp puts her own self-entry in the burn book and lets someone find the book in the hall, causing every girl in school to see what was written, and eventually it's brought to the attention of the principal. Regina and a random girl tell him that there are only 3 other girls in the whole school whose names aren't in the burn book, immediately making Karen, Gretchen, and Katie the prime suspects of the burn book scandal. Principal Duval, that's his name by the way, pulls the fire alarm and assembles all the junior girls in the school gymnasium so they can get to the bottom of who exactly wrote the burn book. When that doesn't happen, everyone in the room collectively agrees that Regina is a problem at the school, before taking turns standing on a soapbox apologizing to a certain classmate or friend that they have directly or indirectly affected with their words. After a student gives an apology that breaks the fourth wall, Janice is up next to apologize, but instead of showing remorse for her actions after revealing that she was the ringleader in the turbulent chaos that was Regina's life, she tells Regina to go fuck herself, but Regina gets hit by a bus instead. The next day, for literally no reason whatsoever, Katie stands up and tells everyone that she is responsible for all the things that were written in the Barbie Death Note. After getting suspended for a few weeks, Katie goes to see Renee wrapped up in bandages from her accident, but gets cold feet and leaves. Once her suspension is over, Katie makes amends with a not drug dealer, and her teacher tells her that she will get extra credit for joining the mathletes instead of going to fake prom. Katie competes in the mathlete state championship competition as promised, while everyone else is getting ready to go to their fake prom. North Shore High ends up winning the Cool Math Games state championship, and for some reason, they take Katie back to the fake prom where she runs into Regina Rapp in the bathroom. The two of them connect and make amends while Regina is on drugs, before telling Katie that she would rather be called a bitch than be called Reginald. After that little heart-to-heart, we see Shane Oman, Regina's side piece or main dish depending on how you want to look at it, one fake prom king, and the winner of fake prom queen is... Catty Heroin. Katie gives an unwanted and most importantly unnecessary speech about how everyone is royalty and shares her fake crown with everyone at the dance. She apologizes to Janice and makes out with Aaron while everyone is enjoying their fairy tale ending. And that's it. That's every single adaptation of Mean Girls. It's hard to do the same thing over and over 4 times in a row. Well, 3 out of 4 times in a row and still have it be a sensation. There is a lot of genuine love for this franchise that I was not expecting when I started getting info for this video. I even learned that October 3rd is Mean Girls Day due to the fact that when Aaron asked Katie what day it was October 3rd. If I had to choose a favorite character out of all of this, it would surprisingly be Joe for Mean Girls 2, while my least favorite being Mandy. Also from Mean Girls 2. Joe was just so much smarter and better than Mandy in literally every way, it wasn't even a fair battle of wits between the two of them. Really, the only reason why Mandy ever got an upper hand over Joe in the third act of the movie was completely by accident and not at all by careful planning and underhanded tactics. And even then, that advantage didn't last long once people learned the real truth and that Joe even tried several times to return the money rather than just accept it. Out of all three Regina Georges we saw, the theatrical musical Regina definitely had more star power and held a greater sense of being larger than life and demanding the attention of those around her than the Reginas that came before her. But the original Gina was simply the better written character in terms of being a queen bee. Her manipulations were just so much more subtle and powerful than all the other Mean Girls could ever contend with. If there was a way to see a Regina that was as captivating as in the 2024 movie, but was as cunning and manipulative as the Regina from the original 2004 movie that had to go toe-to-toe against Joe Mitchell or someone as smart as her, I would watch that for sure. Hell, maybe instead of one girl trying to take on another queen bee, we have two queen bees, one of them being the embodiment of star power that 2024 Regina was, and the other one being the master manipulator that 2024 Regina was, with both of them going up against a genius like Joe at the same time, while also trying to outdo each other and become the true queen bee of North Shore High School. Kind of like the second half of Death Note, where we had Nier, who was the more intelligent and rational character, and Mello, who was the more active and impulsive character, both trying to outdo each other, while also trying to beat Kira, aka Light Yagami. Now that would be a wild ride I would love to see. Honestly, I don't like Katie in any of the Mean Girl movies that she's in. She is far too naive for me to even feel bad about the things that she does or the things that happen to her. She gets manipulated by Janice and Damien to cut class on her second day of school. She gets manipulated by Janice into becoming a double agent inside the plastics. She gets manipulated by Regina and the plastics to write her feelings in the burn book. She gets manipulated by Gretchen to kick Regina out of the plastics instead of having Gretchen do it herself. She gets manipulated by Karen and Gretchen to have a party at her house when they tell her Aaron will be there if she does it. She gets manipulated into admitting she wrote the book when she had almost absolutely nothing to do with it. She gets manipulated into being on the mathlete team by Kevin G and Tina Fey. She gets manipulated into getting off the mathletes by Damien and the plastics by telling her it will ruin her social life, and she even manipulates herself into being stupid just for a boy's attention. Her entire personality is just a side character that happened to become the main character on accident. Almost every other character is more interesting than Katie because the only things that are memorable about her come from the manipulation she experiences at every point in her life. But a character I dislike more than Katie, outside of Mandy of course, is Janice. Say what you will, but honestly, Regina was fucking right about Janice. She was obsessed with her, and she went crazy because of it. Janice spent so much time feeling like a victim that it never once crossed her mind to get over Regina or get over herself. Janice was so obsessed with Regina that the first new kid she met, she trained her to be just like Regina in order to destroy Regina. And when Janice's grand plan blows up in her face, she gets upset at Katie and quite literally refuses to show remorse for the webs of manipulation that she has spun across each adaptation of Mean Girls because she just doesn't care. She would rather blame other people for her problems than just admit that maybe she shouldn't have tried to manipulate the first new student who walked into her class. Everything that happens in these movies is because of Janice's petty obsession with Regina and wanting to humiliate her. She's like the Dio Brando of the Mean Girls lore, but nowhere near as impressive or interesting or important. Do you know what else is neither impressive nor interesting? Katie being able to solve how much fat is in whatever food Regina's eating. Because, one, not only did she get the answer wrong in the last iteration of Mean Girls, but two, why would Regina even ask her friends, one of which is a known dumbass, and the other one which doesn't know shit about math, about how much fat is in her food, except to show off that Katie is good at math, which she doesn't know because she just met Katie. Not only that, but why wouldn't she just pull out her phone or a calculator, because all phones have calculators at this point, and just figure out how much is in there? Literally, she could have just done this instead of had the conversation about fat, but we needed to have that conversation so we could show how big brain Katie is and that she's good at math, even though she's not. Literally, the entire conversation about how much fat is in yogurt is very superfluous and can be easily avoided and removed had Regina just pulled out her phone and typed the numbers in her phone. Why would she ask Karen, who couldn't even spell the word orange, like what type of percent that fat is from the food? And why would she ask Gretchen, who probably also doesn't know the information, when she could just go on Google, use a calculator, or do it herself? She doesn't know Katie's good at math, so she only asked this because she's in a movie and the plot requires it. In a real-world situation, when two of your two friends are dumbasses, you would not be asking them this question. While we are talking about the issues I have with Mean Girls as a whole, can we talk about how stupid and utterly pointless it would be for Regina to pin the burn book on Katie if the people in this franchise had brains in their heads? 1. There are entries in the burn book that date back to before Katie was even a student at North Shore High. So, it would be impossible for Katie to make those entries about people she had never met years before she was even in the same continent as them, let alone the same school. 2. Handwriting. Regina's handwriting is distinctively different from Katie's. Not only that, but if anyone were just to compare the handwriting in the book to that of the female students at the school, then they would have a clear match of who did this. And don't tell me they didn't have the resources for this, because there were literally several different investigations going on when criminal behavior was listed in the book. And if these police officers were worth a damn, then they would have looked at the fingerprints of the book and its pages, or simply compared the handwriting. Once they do that, Regina's plan comes crashing down. 3. Cameras. In the second movie, cameras were used multiple times to catch people in the act of doing things. And while I won't speak on how prominent security cameras were in 2004, I know for sure that there are security cameras in high schools in the year of 2024, which means all they need to do is go back to when Regina dropped the burn book in the halls, and that closes the case right there. Number 4. Speaking of the 2024 version, it was literally Regina's mom that brought her daughter the burn book in the first act of the movie. She even commented on it, and Regina said that that book was childish and that she didn't use it anymore, which means her mom knows exactly what happened and who wrote those things, and she should have said something, but just didn't. Because, well, that would have made too much sense, and your major conflict in the third act falls apart when the master plan is easily dealt with like that. Like, the entire burn book storyline falls apart when you stop and think about it for 10 seconds and realize that it shouldn't work at all, that this entire premise would have never gotten off the ground if people actually used their heads. But for some reason it did, and that's what I don't like about it. Barring my issues with the franchise, I had a fun time watching all these movies and also seeing how things were adapted in the modern era. Each Mean Girls adaptation really is a testament to the time period it was produced in, and I kinda like it for that. If I had to rank these in order from least favorite to favorite, it would go something like Mean Girls 2, Queen Bees and Wannabes, the book that Mean Girls was based on, Mean Girls on Broadway, Mean Girls, the theatrical musical, and of course, the original Mean Girls 1. I had a lot of fun with this video, more than I was expecting to, and perhaps this was a more fun video to make than a Spy Kids marathon. Maybe not. If you want to see a Spy Kids marathon, let me know and I can definitely work on that. But if you want to see my last video, click here. And if you want to listen to more of my voice, for some reason, you can watch this playlist right here. However, that's where I'm gonna leave off for now. Thanks for staying until the end of the video, and a big thank you to all 1,351 people who bought tickets to the Inviso Bill show. Tell me what you thought about this video, and what you want to see me talk about next time. But, until that next time arrives, I'm Inviso Bill, and that's all for my spill. Like, comment, hit subscribe. You'll never know when, but I'll see you next time.